first technique I want to introduce, and it goes back to that point about traditionally, any of us who were trained in marketing will have been exposed to customer segmentation. So demographic segmentation usually, sometimes getting into psychographics, but it's more demographic driven. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to reframe that, and you guys may already be going down this road anyhow, but nevertheless, it's a technique that we find, particularly in large corporates, is they haven't really thought of the world this way, because they've been doing it the other way. And what's wrong with that? Well, I think, as we've already said, there's nothing wrong with customer segmentation per se. It's just it was never really designed to understand the needs of customers in the third decade of the 21st century. So let's get this technique. So any questions just before I dive into this first? Good. Okay, fantastic. So why do we have to do it? Well, it's in our quest to become more scientific about the customer experience. We need to get a clear and absolute focus on the needs in associated processes and experiences. Right? And as I've already mentioned here, the soft and fluffy sentiments of many so-called customer gurus, leave you want to run for the hills. It's like we want to make customers happier. Well, of course we do, but we don't make them happy by not delivering successful outcomes, right? That's how we make them happy. So let's engineer those successful outcomes for customers. And customer segmentation, whilst it was very good for what it did, in the context of, as we've already said, this increased amount of complexity, the enlightened customer and so on, we need something which can give us a laser focus on who are the customers we want to do business with, what are their needs, and then progressively, how do we attach metrics to those needs to know that we're delivering them? So that's where this comes in. And basically, the idea that this gets put out there, and we were sharing this, like, I was trying to think, like, when was the first time we actually shared this deck of slides now? And you see this popping up everywhere these days, but it was in the 2006 book. So this is 17 years ago, where we talked about this. And it was two people born in 1948, both billionaires, both live in castles, both English, married twice, globally famous, and internationally loved and hated. And we can say that 17 years on, we can say the same things happening. And it's about understanding that what might have worked in the past through customer segmentation isn't working now. And the reason being is that these two people, though they share the same demographic profile, all right, they definitely don't share the same sets of needs. Because if we have a look at who these two people are, one is now the King of England, King Charles, and the other is the Prince of Darkness, Ozzy Osbourne, Black Sabbath. And yet, if you think about it, same demographic data, completely different sets of needs. And nobody can tell me on this planet that these guys have got the same sets of needs. They haven't. They live completely different lives. But if we were basing our assumptions on customer segmentation and demographic data, we would miss the point. It's not that that's bad, it doesn't go far enough. So hence the need for customer categorization. And what it's about? It's about understanding, what does success look like to our customers and the customers we want to do business with. So let's get into what this basically is. It's right the way across the whole experience as well. It's not just from the bits where they interact with us as an organization, but it's those upstream things, which is where the need arises, to those downstream things where the need is satisfied and the successful outcome is delivered. So with that in mind, and we'll come to talking about customer life cycles, later on in the week, there are three types of customer. Right, and we could debate this, but the point is that we use this as a model to get people really laser focused. We are funders, that's where the money comes from, which effectively funds our business, our organization. They're the people who give us the money, they're the people who provide the revenue. We have watchers, so those are people who are not directly involved in the experiences, but have an interest in its successful outcome. And we have enablers. So the people we interact with to actually deliver the customer experience and the processes. Right. So let's have a look at each one of those in turn. So funders, where does the money come from? And when we're talking with charitable organizations, this is always an interesting topic, because they go, ooh, money. Ooh, no, we don't like money. No, it's dirty, it's sordid and everything. We're a charity. We're all about charitable things, some money. You go, well, where do you get your revenue from? And they go, well, we have contributors. The little old lady who leaves money to us instead of leaving it to the cat's home, that type of thing, contributors. And you go, okay, so that's where you get your revenue. No, it's contributions. We receive contributions. You go, so how have you optimized the receipt of contributions then? And they go, oh, well, we talk to people about the good stuff that we're doing around the planet, and we hope that they empathize with us, and then they'll give us more contributions. Right? Okay, so not very scientific at all then, really. No, because money's very capitalist, and we're like not anti-capitalist as such, but that people will start trying to rationalize what they're doing. It might be that you're a government entity, right? It might be that the Internal Revenue Service in the States was an interesting one. And I can remember on day one, I was speaking with the senior guys, and they said, you talk about that Triple Crown thing, revenue, cost, and service. And we go, yeah. And they go, revenue is not important to us. And we go, how can it not be important? It's your middle name. You're the Internal Revenue Service. You're the taxation authority. And they go, no, you don't understand. We get our revenue allocated to us from the government. And you go, right, okay. And where does that money come from? And they go, well, the citizen, of course, through taxation. And you go, right. And what are you doing to optimize your revenues? No, it's like a fixed thing. We're moving to zero-based budgeting now, where every year we have to build up what we need. But at the same time, the government allocates us that money. And you go, well, hang on a minute. As a citizen paying taxes here in the US, as I am at the moment, and paying taxes back in the UK as well, I'm really interested in how much taxation you put on the people. And I want to know I'm getting the biggest bang for the buck as a citizen for the use of that money that I'm providing for you. Now, while you might not directly want to grow revenues, there are ways that you could do that and at the same time reduce the taxation burden. Well, why would we want to do that? Because we get contributions from the government. You get where I'm going from. So it doesn't matter what business you're in, whether it's taxes, whether you call it income, whether you call it revenue, and there's a whole bunch of different names, but that's where the money comes from. The logic of this is that without funders, you don't have a business. Doesn't matter what you're doing on the planet, without getting funding, you're not able to do it. Does that make sense? Now, interestingly enough, that doesn't mean that the funding customer is your most important customer. And we'll come on to that in a few moments' time. The second type of customer that we see are what we refer to as watchers, right? So as it says, it's people not directly involved in the customer experience and processes, but have an interest in its successful outcome. So on a macro scale, it might be regulators, compliance people, it could be the senior management team, it could be the shareholders, whoever's investing in your business to make sure it works. They're not directly involved in the delivery of the service, but they have an interest in seeing whatever you are doing being successful. All right. So that's the watchers. And then the third type, which the majority of us are in this bucket, if you want, are called enablers. So it's people we interact with to deliver the customer experience and the process. Now, in the past, we might have referred to these as the employees, the internal ones, but enablers, as we know, might be people we've chosen to partner with that are outside the scope of our immediate business, but they help us deliver better products and service to our clients. So it's our organization, partners, suppliers, and distributors. So it's right the way again across that entire customer experience, not just the bit that we deliver specifically, but from when the need arises to when the outcome is achieved, when the need is satisfied. So that's the three different types. Now, I've already mentioned, without funders, we don't have an organization or a business, right? But if you talk to people like Richard Branson at Virgin, he would say his most important customer is the enabler customer. Now, why is that? Because if we don't give our employees and our partners the right tools and techniques to be able to deliver success, right, we fail anyhow. So if we take like Uber as an example, in Uber's ecosystem, who is their most important customer? Sorry, Jenny, I saw your lips move there.
Yeah, so it's a driver.
Yeah, the driver. Because without the drivers, you can't get us, the passengers, the travelers, to actually go in the vehicle anyhow. So the drivers have to be, and as we know in South Africa, there were a few issues with that a few years ago. Recruiting the wrong drivers can create chaos and mayhem and, real dissatisfaction with the brand. But at the same time, looking after the drivers. Now, in Virgin's world, there's over 300 different companies now under the Virgin brand. Their focus is primarily on the enabling customer, because what they will say is that without giving them the right tools and techniques and wherewithal to be able to make decisions in the moment and have action in the moment capability, we'll lose the funders anyhow. So though we know we don't have a business without funders, they are not the most important customer as far as many organizations who see CX from an outside in are concerned. So that's a little bit on any questions so far on the different types of customer?
No.
So how do we do that as a next? Sorry, go on, please. Yeah.
No. I was just saying I'm quite interested. I think it's quite an interesting concept, especially with the enablers. Just thinking about the suppliers, but also employees, which I completely agree with, is because they contribute to that value system. But also it's almost like a balancing act, because I'm also holding them accountable to a certain level of service. So it's like, how do you balance all of that out in terms of that experience?
Yeah. And it is one of these things that when you think about it, it's very logical. And it's not a quantum leap from what we've done in the past in terms of segmentation by demographics. And people say, yeah, you're just doing psychographic segmentation. So you call it what you want, it's horses for courses. It's just that if you're looking at it this way, the way you face off against these different types of customer is different. We don't treat them all the same. We have to think about them in different ways. Now, not so much in this week where we're doing the masters, but for those people, you have a colleague in the organization, and Serena knows this person who next week is starting the Champions program. Now, in the Champions program, we do strategy, leadership, and execution, which is how do you do this stuff at scale? And this week, what I'm going to be doing is introducing you techniques and tools that you can use. But if you had to do this customer categorization at scale, I'm going to show you an example about how people do it for one experience. But if you have to do it at scale, how would you do it? And it can really give you some insights about the different, under the funding type, for instance, you can categorize customers to the ones which are most important, least important, and so on. And I'm going to show you that example in a minute. But coming back and doing it at scale, the strategy, leadership, and execution is where we're going to use all the tools that you guys are going to learn this week, and then understand how do we do this on behalf of our clients at an enterprise-wide level. How do we educate them to think this way? And then in doing that, allow us to deliver a better product and service for them. So it is really useful. Do we do it in every project? No, we don't. This type of assessment that I'm going to show you in a moment or two, we tend to do it, 50% of the time. And it's usually when we're doing it at scale. So, but it's important to know it exists rather than just looking through the segmentation window. Which is what I was originally trained at when I was doing my marketing diplomas and stuff, was about how to do demographic segmentation. And yeah, it's great. It just doesn't go far enough. So yeah, build on what you've got if that's what you're doing, and begin to better understand customer needs, but look at it through this lens. So how do we do that? Well, here we have our funders, watchers, and enablers, and it really is a brainstorming exercise, and you could do it either by yourself or do it with people. What I suggest you guys do when you're doing the exercises is decide whether you're going to do it as a team or you want to do it as individuals, or split yourself into 2 mini teams, whichever way you want to do it. All we need to know from the accreditation point of view is that you understand the subject. And understanding the subject is by doing it as an exercise. It's not by me giving you a 20-question test, right? That doesn't tell me you understand it. That just tells me you recall what I was saying and what the slides say. What I want to do is know if you understand it, whether you use it or not is neither here nor there. But if you understand it, you will know how to use it. You'll know what to do with a screwdriver and hammer. You won't sort of conceptualize them. You'll be able to actually use them. So in the brainstorming session, what we do is we do this. We get people to write post-it notes down about, so let's say under funding, for instance, under that type of customer. Okay, where does all our money come from? And can we characterize those different types of sources of the money? And then having done that, we then get rid, say you're doing it as a team, we then get rid of the duplicates. So we end up with, one of each. And then we decide for ourselves who are the very important, who's less important. And basically split them into those 3 strata. And when we're talking about important, very important, and less important, it doesn't mean because somebody's less important, they're not important. It just means that in the context of why we're prioritizing them that way, that's what it is. Now, you may determine the priority is to do with who do we get the most revenue from, perhaps. So the VIPs are the ones with the greatest revenue, IPs, some revenue, LIPs, less revenue, perhaps. Or it might be who is the most difficult to deal with. So let's say in the funding customers, they'd be the VIPs. They're really incredibly difficult to deal with, but we know we have to put the legwork in to win them, the IPs and LIPs. It might be, for instance, who are the customers that present us with the greatest difficulties and problems? And again, VIPs, IPs and LIPs. So on the bottom right there, it says prioritize, who is important, and create a prioritized list. So from an exercise point of view, and then from the doing it point of view, make sure you're sharing the same criteria for what's important to us. So say, for instance, we're in a recession, that what's VIPs, IPs and LIPs are important to us. It might be, for instance, if we're not careful, if we're in a recession, we might lose quite a lot of customers. So the very important ones to us are the ones that we prize the most highly. We have the longest term relationships, and we know when things start ticking up again, they're the ones that we can turn the tap on most quickly. So it does change over time. It's not a fixed thing. It's not sort of set in concrete. It's like you might think about this when you're doing a strategy review, in the top team level once a year, is how do we determine the priority over how we look at our customers? So having done that, any questions so far, guys?
All good, thank you.
Okay, good. Having done that, what we then said to ourselves, okay, and I think this goes to the question earlier on about, yeah, it's great Disney doing 100% this 100% of the time, is well, you've got to, people say, Steve, where should I start? I'll say, you really don't have a choice. And they go, what do you mean? And you go, well, you have to start where you are now. Well, that's the reality. Yeah, we'd love to start with 50% of this stuff having been done, but that's not the world we live in, is it? We've got to start with where we are now, with limited budgets, with this, lack of resource, with short time scales, with all the pressures of getting the business, running the business as usual. We're starting this, right? So in this instance, these guys in this example, we're choosing across funders who's the most important to us, watchers and enablers, and then starting to look at what their needs are and their experiences. So this idea of working backwards. It's quite rare that we have the chance to do this for startups. And when you're doing it for startups, it's like, you start with a blank sheet of paper, right? And what I say to people is that imagine you've been running the business for 2 or 3 years. What would it look like, right? Okay, do this exercise now then. Right? So you don't start with a blank sheet of paper and conceptualize and just come up with an idea of this, creating your straw man based on, the ideal. No, do it based on as close to reality as you can get. The vast majority of us have inherited the way we're doing things at the moment. So we have to apply this in that sort of context. We can't sort of say, we used to do it. Well, that's a load of rubbish now. We're going to change it to this way. No, we can't do that. We have to take people with us. It's the hearts and minds. It's a journey. It's about people getting it. So in the context of now, and you'd say you did the funding category, who is the very important customer, right? And you would start by looking at their experiences, getting better at articulating the needs, and then building more product and service which is oriented around their needs, right? So you create this prioritized list, you begin to identify it. So exercise 1 is simply that. And there's the sort of template I'd like you to populate, is to go through identifying who are the funders, who are the watchers, who are the enablers, apply a prioritization to that. So VIPs, IPs and LIPs are very important, important and less important, and just break out those 3 strata. Simple as that, really. Now, if you're doing it as individuals, great, bring it together and collate it. The advantage you've got from an organizational point of view is, right, if we're running like an open class where people come from different organizations, you're going to be doing it as, in a singular way. The advantage you guys have got is you might sort of say, okay, let's each of us have a go at doing it by ourselves. So I'm going to take a pile of post-it notes, right? I'm going to write my 3 columns, funders, watchers and enablers, right? And then I'm going to put them on the list, and then I'm going to identify, I think these are important because we get most revenue from them. So these are the VIPs, IPs and LIPs. Now, if you bring that together when you do the exercise as a team, right, and then take out the duplicates, you actually got a better simulation of what it's like to do it for real.